Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
2005. I was part of MINUSTAH United Nations Stabilization Mission in Haiti. One day we were informed that criminals were in Cité Soleil, so we arrived by the dawn and rapidly started searching for them. People were very terrified, but my French is not that good, so I almost cannot understand anything they are saying. The sergeant is visibly nervous and approaches some grouped civilians and says something that from the few words I understand, he seems to be asking if they saw any strange movements in that area. An old man can barely say anything, and there is a pregnant woman who keeps screaming. The sergeant is increasingly nervous and irritated now. I believe in my guts that something very bad is going to happen. But apart from people's screams, everything is calm in the background. There are not even bird sounds. Some guys next to me also get nervous as they see that man shouting at the people. In my mind, there is just a hammering thought that does not let me be quiet. Just thought all the time that this was a perfect environment for an ambush, and the sergeant is an idiot for putting us in this situation. But all he does is shout at them. So when a time has passed and he is still without answers, the motherfucker just gets closer to the woman and punches her in the face. I ask if this was necessary, but he just tells me to shut up and says, "Go complain to the commander." Then I just tell him to fuck off, and he does not believe what he is hearing. Other guys do not either. But I feel like many wanted to say the same thing. The woman is on the floor with a bleeding nose and crying. I think fuck all this and go to her. If it was an ambush, we would already be fucked while that idiot was shouting at them. I try to get her up, but the sergeant just kicks me when my back is turned. I could have fallen on the woman's belly, but luckily that did not happen. This guy is totally deranged. We'll die if we follow him, I think. The corporal guy is uncomfortable because of our behavior and says that we are disrupting the operation, and he is right. The sergeant turns to him and tells him to shut up. I get up and punch him in the face. Other guys quickly separated us. They could have done it when they saw me get up, but they still let me hit this bastard. Sergeant gets batshit crazy and is swearing without mincing his words. Seems like one of those drill sergeants from Nam movies. It is so ridiculous I can hardly believe it. I mean, it is well known that our armed forces were inexperienced, but did not imagine it would be this much. I was just a temporary soldier and was surprised to see a career sergeant act like that. Corporal took a firm stance and continued to argue that we should focus on the operation. The old man from before is now even quieter. The woman gets up and some other women with her are trembling. They did not know what we were saying to each other in our language, and that just made things worse. Suddenly, a shot hits a tree near where I was. "Cover!" I shout to my companions. I just hide behind a wall and get my FAL ready. I admit that was my first time in a confrontation, so I was very inexperienced. You always do training in the military, but being in the crossfire is a whole other thing. I yell in French at the civilians to get down or go behind something. I can only imagine it made sense because they obeyed me. The shots were coming from a building in the north, so I took my FN FAL out of the sling and shot where the bullets were coming from. In a few seconds, it turned into a general shootout. We were all nervous, and then when we realized it, they stopped shooting. Corporal thought they had run out of magazines and then told us to move to better positions. Honestly, I kept thinking that this was what they wanted us to think and almost refused to follow that order. But in the pressure of the moment, I did it too. He just guided us to a concrete building. Guess we were about 400 meters away from them, but nothing happens, not even a single shot. A guy takes a rosary and starts praying. Another guy is looking with binoculars but cannot see anything in the previous building. We remained in this torturous position for 20 minutes until the shooting started again. But now it was coming from behind and seems to have so many of them. We changed our position and started shooting for a long time, and just like the other time, the enemy shots ceased out of nowhere. The corporal looks a bit strange and about to break, so he just walks out the door. The sergeant shouts at him, "Come back," but he just does not care and is shot in the head. It was the first time I saw someone die in front of me without further ado. His head after the shot was one of the most horrible things I had ever seen. I feel like I am going to break down, and that it awaits all of us. The rosary guy is now about to break down too. All he does is pray out loud and ask God to protect us. I do not understand what happened to the corporal, but feel a strange urge to leave the building. When that passed, I got nervous again and went back to my ways. Others are equally nervous, but they try to maintain their composure. As for me, I was nervous with a bit of hatred and great desire to put a bullet in the sergeant's head. This guy did not let anyone take a radio, put us in a disadvantageous position, and was a complete jerk at all. We started shooting again, but for a long time no one fired back. I could only assume they were moving somewhere else. After an hour of hiding and nothing more happening, the idiot gave us the order to form groups of 2 and search the area. At that point, I was certain that my mother would not even receive my body back in a coffin, and it would just be another corpse left in Cité Soleil. I stayed with the guy who had the rosary. I will call him Daniel. He was a calm and attentive dude. We searched the area for hours, and after a while we found a guy with an AK, but he did not look well. There is a strange stare on the man's face. He looks worse than any addict I have seen in all my life. There is fear, anger, and a third thing on his expressions. A third thing I cannot explain even now. He has an AK without a magazine, and just stares at us while repeatedly pulling the trigger. I shouted at him, "Drop the rifle and lay on the floor." But he does not care, and just keeps pulling the trigger. We just immobilized him and he did not even react, so it was easy to tie his hands with a nylon clamp. As I looked at the man's face, I began to seriously think that he was a zombie. Haiti has its own stories about zombies, and in most cases they are used for grunt labor, quite unlike the flesh eaters in books and movies. I also started thinking about the possibility of someone using them as mercenaries. Would that be possible? They do not care about pain. They obey orders without question, and they seem more immune to fatigue than we do. What happened after that was disgraceful. We went back to the sergeant and showed him the guy. He then became convinced that the civilians in that area were helping the criminals and gave the order to clean up the area. When we questioned him, he replied that was what the commander had instructed him to do if we found any criminals there, well before we arrived. Daniel and I refused to participate in the massacre, so we ran away, were arrested, and then returned home as dishonored outcasts. This was covered up, and the commander managed to censor local radio stations. But the following year, there was a much worse massacre committed by MINUSTAH, and this time they had to admit it after much pressure. It was in that same year that I learned of Daniel's death. He hanged himself with a tie hours before his sister's wedding.
My dad used to be a LRRP long-range reconnaissance patrolman in Finland and went on a UN peacekeeping mission to Egypt, Sinai, and Cyprus. So he's got some experience from lots of different climates. Here's some things he has said. 1. Proper Arctic winter is easier than you'd think, because while it's cold, it's also dry. All you really have to do is to stay warm, and that you can do in many different ways. Proper layered clothing, which you can add to and take away according to level of activity, making small fires, and just physical activity. Keep moving, to keep warm. The downside is that you burn a shit ton of calories. A day-long ski march through a wilderness in full combat gear can burn up to 8,000 calories per day. It's hard to simply eat enough to keep up with that consumption. 2. Tropic heat is a lot more taxing than Arctic cold because you can't really escape it. The heat and humidity is everywhere, and you just keep sweating like a horse. You can drink 5 liters a day, and your piss is still coffee-colored. 3. The absolute worst condition is subarctic forest, Finland, Canada, and Siberia level, in autumn. It rains constantly, so every part of your gear is wet, and will not get dry even if hung up on a tent next to your stove. The temperatures are just above freezing point during the day, but dip into freezing on nights, so you are constantly in danger of hypothermia. Your feet and fingers are always wet and cold, and practically impossible to keep warm and dry, which leads to sickness, headaches, and general misery. Whatever fires you make will smoke like hell and give out your location. You will glow like a beacon in thermals due to the difference between body heat and ambient temperature. The nights in the wilderness are just that kind of pitch black that seem to suck all light into it like a void. so no amount of light source seems to be enough. It's easier for the enemy to spot you than for you to see 10 meters in front of you. It's just wet, cold, dark misery, 24/7.
This is the state of the Dutch military and all of the fuck-ups that came to light in recent years. Corruption, neglect, and purposeful mismanagement. UN peacekeeping so Bert Koenders could get a cushy UN job. On a peacekeeping mission in Mali because of our then Minister of Foreign Affairs, or aide Bert Koenders. Said labor bureaucrat later landed some UN mission in Mali. 6 July 2016, air assault training with a mortar system. Hotchkiss Commando. A round goes off in the chamber, killing 2 instantly and critically injuring another soldier. Rounds used were a rush order for an earlier Afghanistan mission. Ammunition was literally ferried from and to Afghanistan and reused for the Mali mission. Rounds ordered on rushed US DoD advice. They gave explicit warnings about reliability and quality concerns. They ended up in an uncooled munition storage container in the burning Mali sun after long-time storage in Stan and Netherlands. The primer leaked out of rounds, safety became faulty, and mortars were in effect armed while dropped in the tube. It instantly blew up the aforementioned air assault dudes. A complete inquiry was held. From the beginning, the armed forces and ministry tried to enact damage control. They failed miserably, obfuscating the truth, telling half-lies, ducking questions, and overall being scumbag human beings. The commander of the armed forces bites the dust, as does the Minister of Defense, a woman at the time. All of the idiots that procured these rounds, our DoD, and the logistical chain of command remain untouched. As for Dutch commandos, our top-tier Army Special Operations Forces dudes have a shoot house for Dutch commandos, top-tier special forces. The shoot house is basically an open-spaced hangar with mock rooms set up using faux walls. Walls consist of a wooden skeletal structure with linen stretched across. The shoot house was determined to not be safe, but you have to exercise, right? We have a shoot house drill. Lining up to breach, go through the shoot house. A sergeant in the back of the line is still waiting outside of the house when the breach team is entering another room. Entered rooms mean turning or engaging targets that are oriented to the original entry point. The said breaching team engages targets in the shoot house. Bullets travel straight through targets and linen walls and hit the Special Operations Forces sergeant at the back of the breaching team. The sergeant is killed in a most inexcusable manner. Absolutely stupid if you ask me. More situations exist where these guys are exposed to unnecessary risks, but you could literally bundle all of this stuff and publish it in a book if you were to do that. As for equipment, Dutch commandos take a lawyer on retainer because their warnings go unheeded, and only media attention will get the DoD to listen up. Clothing is utter shit. Rips up, coloring does not hold, fire safety concerns. Weapons in an utter state of disrepair, barrels blowing up, uppers breaking, cannibalizing guns to keep other ones going. The situation is described as soldiers on these boards lamenting about the disrepair of their standard infantry equipment, not some top-tier Special Operations Forces dudes. Absolutely disgraceful. DoD comes on nightly talk shows and tries to do damage control, stating they feel passed over and want these men to feel heard, instead of them seeking publicity to highlight these faults. All optics, though. They want them to address these things internally so they can boot anyone complaining and keep the decline going. To add on these fuck-ups, there's also the general state of disrepair and political sabotage of equipment. Dutch armored forces have all but been removed from existence. First, the Cold War stopped, and after that, the politicians felt they could just cut spending altogether, only for them to complain and cry, "Ma, big bad Russia," halfway through the 10S. Be an autistic Minister of Defense. Let us sell most remaining tanks because fuck it, who needs them? Consider selling them to Indonesia. Cancel that shit because of human rights violations. End up selling them to Finland that actually uses them. Leave some in mothball storage facilities along with spag variants. I have no idea how ready these tanks are. They are not in active use, and I am guessing they are not even ready to start after sitting still for so long. Especially having heard stories about how our DoD treats its maintenance and readiness schedules. Training still necessitates mechanized infantry to work together with armor, so APCs, AFVs, and MBTs train alongside German tanks as a stopgap. Realize that this is not enough. Lease German Bundeswehr tanks and create a joint command so you can keep crews trained in case you even need those mothballed units in a warehouse. Also, Dutch procurement idiocracy. Decide you want CV-90. You want the Bushmaster cannon on it because of special needs and do not need no 40mm Bofors with airburst functions and whatnot, creating entirely new problems for the design. Decide to drive these vehicles around. Find out you need spare parts. Start cannibalizing the fleet because spare parts are expensive, leading to appalling readiness. The funny thing is that our politicians don't want to spend anything on defense, make a big fuss about spending the mandated defense budget, and claim they want to do everything to protect and back our brave men and women. They secretly hate them, though, and would much rather have some European or American force protect us, so they could spend all of their stolen tax money on social welfare programs, semi-public projects for their well-connected buddies, and tax breaks for multinational corporations. Critical report about status of the armed forces came out, and the reactions from some politicians was more than telling. A highlight was a critical shortage of munition for training, or in general for that matter. Forces training are sometimes forced to yell bang bang and other ridiculous shit during exercises. Maybe not uncommon for some everyday training stuff, but this was apparently during big exercises meant to evaluate training quality. House representatives, Parliament, jokingly answer critical media by claiming the bang-bang situation sounds quite funny to them. He needs to backtrack the following day as he is overwhelmingly called a dumbass by everyone but his own party. To top it off this year, there was another incident where troops being sent to that big NATO exercise were not provided with winter clothing as procurement fucked up. Instead, they had to buy it themselves and turn in receipts. The media got wind of this horse shit, and the entire situation unfucked itself rather quickly. Same situation applies as well for the Air Force with mothballed F-16s, procurement of F-35s following purchasing less than initial order, New Hampshire, 90 helicopter that was delayed several times for reasons. Shameful in general. Literally pre-World War II conditions where everything was old shit and would get steamrolled by anyone.
I'm still recovering from a hangover, but I got some free beer last night. I work part-time at a restaurant for extra cash. After my shift, the owners and manager were testing new beers the suppliers send out. Hey Anon, try this beer, tell us what you think. Wow, that is actually really good. Okay, have the rest of this 750 milliliter bottle then. Hey, thanks. Finish it, bullshit, for a while, go out for a smoke. Come back in, boss lady had a Budweiser waiting for me. Awesome. Talk about fishing with boss lady's husband for a bit. Buy myself another Budweiser. A regular stops in, just got back from a peacekeeping mission in Haiti. The first time I had met him, I noticed he was wearing a G-Shock. Gun talk engage. He was with the UN, obviously. Said the Brazilians were awesome to work with, but a little crazy. Liked his Glock better than any of the other sidearms he got to play with. Told me about his ex-Special Air Service buddy. Did not know a whole lot about firearms he had not used before. Said he really liked the SKS. Showed him some pics on my phone of some more obscure firearms. Showed him a guacamole pic, laughed his ass off. Bullshitted about other stuff for a while until he had to leave. Limp handshake. I am disappointed. Boss lady and husband leave shortly after. Get 2 more beers and buy the waitress a couple drinks. Help her close up the restaurant and talk about random shit for a while to sober up. Finally good to drive home at about 2:30. Drive home and drink more beer until 5 a.m. Pretty good night. Also, the UN dude said he thought it was hilarious that there were people lined up at the embassy all day trying to get into our country. Meanwhile, he adopted a furry little dog, and it flew first class with him back to Canada, LOL. I am now hungover.
Complaining about how MUA peacekeeping force shouldn't be well armed or have an aggressive rules of engagement is what killed 10 Belgian paratroopers. On the morning of the 7th, a 10-man patrol of Belgian paratroopers sets out towards the residence of the Rwandan Prime Minister, Agathe Uwilingiyimana. She is a moderate Hutu who wants to integrate the minority Tutsis into the government, and so needs permanent protection from the UN troops against the hardline Hutus. The Belgian soldiers are to escort her to Radio Rwanda, where she shall make a speech to calm down the people after the murder of their president. This mission has been given to the Belgian contingent on the orders of the UN representative in Rwanda, Bubu, although the strongman of the Rwandan military, Colonel Bagasora, has explicitly told Bubu the night of the 6th that he will depose the PM and prevent her from making a radio address. Bagasora is about to make good on his word. 500 hours. The platoon under the command of Lieutenant Lawton arrives at the Prime Minister's house in the center of Kigali. Upon arriving at the mansion, they are fired upon by members of the Rwandan Presidential Guard. 2 of the 4 jeeps are immediately destroyed. The 10 paratroopers seek cover in the gardens around the house. They do not return fire. The UN-imposed rules of engagement state that authorization to fire with rifles can only be given by Battalion HQ. For using a light machine gun, authorization is required from Sector HQ, and only the CIC can give permission to fire a heavy machine gun. 5:15 hours. Platoon to HQ. We are being shot upon from different sides. 5:28 hours. Platoon to HQ. We have spotted 2 AMLs coming towards us. AMLs are armored vehicles the French sold to Rwanda. The Belgian platoon has no anti-tank weapons because the UN had forbidden the Belgian contingent to bring along their Milans and laws because this would make them look too aggressive. For the same reason, the patrols were not allowed to bring heavy machine guns along. 5:30 hours. Lieutenant Lawton makes contact with the Prime Minister. 5:37 hours, Lieutenant Lawton informs Sector HQ that it will be impossible to get the PM to Radio Rwanda. He orders his men to take up defensive positions. 5:49, platoon to HQ. There is now firing on the house of the PM. 6:30 hours. The platoon informs HQ that it is still under fire. 6:44 hours, platoon to HQ. Artillery fire in our direction. The Belgian troops have no mortars or artillery to reply as the use of these weapons has been prohibited under the rules of engagement of the UN. 6:57 hours, platoon to HQ. We are surrounded. 700 hours, platoon to HQ. Members of the Presidential Guard are on the roof of the house. It is impossible for us to take cover. 7:20 hours, platoon to HQ. We are now in the house. Automatic fire in our direction. HQ is still not ordering them to return fire. 7:40 hours. The PM feels she is no longer safe. She slips away and goes and hides in the house of a neighbor. The Presidential Guard will find her there at 11:45 and kill her. 8:17. Platoon to HQ. They have weapons superior to ours. They're now using grenade launchers and the guns of the AMLs against us. 8:32 hours. Battalion HQ asks Sector HQ for instructions. Sector HQ promises to contact the Rwandan military. 8:34 hours. Battalion HQ informs Lawton that he is discharged from his mission to escort the PM. 8:39 hours. 3 armored vehicles of the Bangladeshi UN contingent move out from their barracks to make contact with Lawton's platoon. The Bangladeshi contingent had been assigned the mission by the UN to form a Quick Reaction Force, QRF, to intervene in hotspots. When their soldiers arrived, it was soon clear that Bangladesh had sent raw recruits with no armored vehicles, nor the training to handle them. The UN flew over 8 Russian BTRs they had found abandoned after an earlier mission in Mozambique. They were painted white but could not ride or shoot. After repairs and training of the Bangladeshi recruits, only 3 were available on the fateful 7th of April. 8:44 hours. Lawton once again informs HQ of the growing aggressiveness of the Rwandan soldiers who are demanding the platoon to give up its arms. The Rwandans promise that they will be returned to UNHQ. 8:49 hours. Battalion HQ to platoon. Do not give up your arms. Negotiate. 8:50 hours, Lawton to HQ. Too late, 2 of my men are already on the ground and disarmed. 8:52 hours, the Bangladeshi QRF meets a roadblock in the streets of Kigali and turns back. 8:54 hours, the 10 paratroopers of Lawton's platoon give up their arms. They are made to board a VW minivan, hands over their heads. They are, however, not taken to the UN HQ, but to the barracks of the Presidential Guard. There they are greeted with great hostility. A rumor is spreading amongst the Rwandan soldiers that it was Belgian soldiers who had shot down the plane of their president, Habyarimana. The unarmed Belgian paratroopers are kicked and beaten. 9:06 hours, Lieutenant Lawton manages to contact a Togolese UN observer inside the Rwandan barracks. He uses his radio to contact his battalion commander, Colonel Duez. "We have been taken to the army barracks. They are beating my men. They are going to lynch us." Colonel Duez responds, "Do not you think you are exaggerating?" This was the last contact with the 10 paratroopers, between 9 hours and 10 hours. The paratroopers are hit with clubs and stones and stabbed with bayonets by the Rwandan soldiers. 4 of them finally succumb from their wounds. The other 5 succeed in joining Lieutenant Lawton in the office of the UN observer. One of them has managed to take a revolver from the assailants. They put up a defense in the small office. 9:30 hours, Belgian Captain Theunissen, who has been listening in on the communications, asks for permission to move his company out to mount a rescue mission. Permission denied. 23:15 hours, a UN observer finds the bodies of the paratroopers. Because of the condition of their bodies, he is at first unable to make out if there are 10 or 11 of them. The aftermath. From the 7th onwards, large-scale massacres against the Tutsi population were perpetrated. The Belgian soldiers on the ground ask for permission to try and stop the massacres, but they have neither the weapons nor the mandate. Stunned by the death of the 10 paratroopers and afraid of Belgian public opinion, the Belgian government decides to withdraw the troops. On April 15th, the last of the Belgian troops pulled out, soon to be followed by the other UN contingents. When the paratroopers descend from the plane onto the Belgian military airfield, some of them take out their knife, ritually cut their blue UN caps to pieces, and vow never to fight under the UN flag again. The massacres continue until the French mount Operation Turquoise in the south of the country and the army of Tutsi exiles takes Kigali. Between 500,000 and 1 million people, mostly Tutsi, have been killed. The Hutu Interahamwe militia members, who are the main perpetrators of the genocide, flee to Congo, then still called Zaire. They are pursued by the Tutsis and set upon by other Tutsis living in the east of Congo. Mobutu, ally of the former Hutu regime, orders the Tutsi population to leave his country. The measure backfires and Mobutu's regime is brought down by a coalition of Tutsis and Congolese rebels, who bring Kabila to power. The coalition soon loses its cohesion and Kabila falls out with his former Tutsi and Ugandese allies. Today, the civil war in Congo still rages.
Seriously though, what the fuck? What's peacekeeping about when you're forcing soldiers to watch each other get tortured?
Because the UN as an organization is a fucking joke. The UN basically sucks whenever it comes to anything related to peacekeeping. 9 times out of 10 times a UN peacekeeping force will usually do more harm than good with its presence, or be so fucked by their rules of engagement limitation of force that they can't do jack shit. Rwanda is an example of the latter, where the Canadian General Dallaire knew that shit was about to hit the fan and called the UN for more reinforcements and was basically called to go fuck himself and use what he had. Hence the UN being completely unable to stop the Rwandan genocide or the ensuing utter madness that would happen in the Congo. That would require a post of its own. The UN mission to the Balkans was a prime example of First World troops hemmed in by shit rules of engagements being led by extremely incompetent commanders much of the time. The UN mission was hampered by extremely shitty intelligence, which would be mirrored by a somewhat simultaneous deployment to Somalia, where it also did fuck all, lack of coordination among the various peacekeeping troops, and a lack of motivation to do much beyond look good for the cameras. To pull up another example, check out the UN mission in Sierra Leone, where the Nigerian peacekeepers were actively trying to prolong the conflict in order to profit off of the country's blood diamonds, and the Indian contingent famously refused to do fuck all to actually stop the RUF rebels in the country. It says something that one gunship crew run by mercenaries, God fucking bless Neil Ellis and his crew, did more to save the country of Sierra Leone than an entire UN mission. Eventually, the Brits would come in and work with Ellis to unfuck the situation. But the entire time the UN was there, they spent more time complaining and pretending to care and spurging out about the mercenaries who were doing a far better job than them, than actually fixing the problem. This is basically the model for most UN peacekeeping.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.